good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome from wherever you are joining us from. I'm Annette Richmond, and this is Content Marketing School. And I'm so excited to be here with my best bud, Jillian Whitney. And so, for anyone who does not know you, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Hoo. I'm excited to be here and I get to see you today, Annette. So that's kind of fun because usually we're doing the Media Mavens audio event. And now we're doing a LinkedIn Live. So it's excited to see you face to face. So my name is Jillian Whitney. I am the LinkedIn video easy peasy lady. So I'm all about LinkedIn Live, LinkedIn video, and that's good enough.
Well, it's so funny because I love that we do the Media Mavens every month. It's fun to do audience because it's a little audio, I should say, audio, because obviously it's a little bit different. We both do lives every week and we don't have to worry about the hair and the makeup and everything. And we get to actually have people come on stage and chat with us, which is really always a treat. But I'm so excited to have you here today and talking about this topic, which I think is a big one for both of us. We both have our lives, and obviously, you take that content and you want to be able to repurpose it because when you're a solopreneur, that's the name of the game. So, I wanted to just start and talk about kind of like where we stream and maybe why, because I think that's also part of the whole repurposing. So, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, I'm not as versatile as you because I only go to two platforms. So I go to LinkedIn and I go to YouTube. Now, with StreamYard, which is a tool we both use for our
Mhm.
streaming, because you have to use a third party tool to do LinkedIn Live. So that's for starters. But I only use the two platforms because that's where I have a presence. So while I could stream to Facebook, if I'm not on Facebook, it makes no sense for me to be there. So I do two platforms and then I'm the repurpose queen. Although you're a repurpose queen too, so I'll share the crown.
Oh, okay, okay. So, well, stream basically to LinkedIn and also YouTube as well, and one of the reasons, obviously, because it's content for both platforms. And I stream briefly. I tried Twitter back when it used to be Twitter, and I've tried Facebook. And recently, they started Streamyard made it able for us able to stream to Instagram. And so I have just started doing that, as we were talking about earlier. I don't want to get into it, but it's a little bit tricky to do that so far. But, I figured why not? Because I like to try something new. I don't have a big presence on there, but I figured, let's see how that goes. It's someplace else where people can find me. And actually, as I look on right now, I see someone has joined us on Instagram. Two people joined us on Instagram. And so hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. And I have started to actually put notices like about being there live on Instagram. And so maybe that's helping. So let's jump into the podcasting. And as we talked about, before we went live, we both kind of do the same things, but we do them in different ways. And so we thought we'd kind of make this kind of a round robin kind of thing. So podcasting, Jillian, take it away.
Well, podcasting, I was late to hop on board with podcasting. And one tip that I would give to everybody is don't bite off more than you can chew because it's enough to host a LinkedIn Live show. You start adding on podcasting, you got a whole other bit too. So don't feel you have to do everything. That would be my first tip. So I actually did 100 LinkedIn Live episodes before I even decided to think about podcasting. And then the beauty is that I was able to create my podcast and go back through those 100 episodes, get a theme, and those are the ones that came up on my podcast. I didn't do all 100. I think I did 60 of them because I thought, oh, they all fall into the theme of LinkedIn easy peasy because I'm all about easy peasy. And I was able to backdate those so that they matched when they actually went live. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I use what's called Spotify for podcasters. It was originally called Anchor, and it is a free platform to host your podcast on. And then it pushes out to, I believe I'm on 5 platforms. So it's like Spotify, Apple, iHeart Music, and Amazon Music, iHeart, Stitcher. I don't know. There's a couple others. That's how I do it. So you set it, and then it pushes out automatically every time you upload the next episode. So it's a lot of work in the beginning, Annette. Don't you
Mhm.
agree? But once you get it, then you're on a roll.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And, when it comes to the podcast, so now since you mentioned that you don't have all of them up there, when you do your LinkedIn live shows, do they all feed into your podcast now?
They do now. So every single, and I actually have a system. It's always about staying organized and having systems where literally, as soon as my live is over on Tuesday, because my lives are every single Tuesday, every single week, that night it goes up to the podcast, and you have to do some editing because it's like you want your sound quality to be really good. So we can talk about what tool I use to do that later, because that's
Okay.
important, because it's a
Yep.
different platform. And again, that is the number one thing too, is that when you repurpose, you have to think of where are you repurposing it to, because you might need to make some tweaks, whether we're talking about social channels, podcasts, whatever. So I have found that I want to adjust and make sure it's really, really good sound. So I use a special tool for that. I get the podcast up that night, and then I advertise it the next day and promote it. So that's sort of my process, and it is always the same. I kind of begin with the end in mind. I know that I'm doing to the podcast, so every episode I have has to fit within that theme. Even it could be an awesome episode, but if it doesn't fit the theme, I wouldn't feel right putting it out on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear that, and I do wanna just say a quick hello to our buddy Jeff, who we both adore. Thank you so much for being here, Jeff. It's always a pleasure to see you. So when going back to the idea of the podcast, and I think I had a similar, take on my podcast and my LinkedIn Live show, last year. And, I will just mention, so we don't forget, Jillian's LinkedIn Live show is every Tuesday at 1 PM Eastern, right?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So, when I started my podcast, I started it during the, pandemic when I had no business and nothing to do, and I started just doing solo episodes. And when I started doing LinkedIn Live shows, now I'm late to the game there because you were doing them like at least a year before I was. I started feeding those into my podcast, and my podcast was very, it was kind of loosey goosey. I think I would say, it was first career, and then it was career in business, and then it kind of moved more into business as my business changed and my focus changed. And when I decided to move into a different area, I deliberately closed, sort of stopped that podcast and started a new one. And with my new focus, I am like that as well. I am very focused that every episode of the live and the live that's going to my podcast is focused around a certain topic, because that's the topic that I'm promoting. Now I use a platform. I use Buzzsprout. They do have a free version. I use the paid version. It's like $12 a month, so it's really inexpensive. And they have actually, for slightly a couple of bucks more, um, and equalizer for the audio. So all I have to do is
Mm.
upload it there, and it does that automatically. So that's a plus for me. And they also, make it easy to go out on directories. So my podcast is really it's kind of everywhere. So I will say that. And for mine, I do the same thing. Now I didn't used to promote them immediately, but I learned from listening to a podcast about podcasting, that's called Podcasting Business School. Actually, if you're interested in podcasting, it's a great podcast. And I learned that it's much better to, promote your podcast within like the first 72 hours, because you get that boost, and it signals to some of the, to like Apple. that you're getting a little juice on that podcast and will help them promote you. So I just have to say one thing. I normally wouldn't stop, but we have Cher Jones in the house, and I cannot believe you, Cher. Oh my God, we're so flattered and excited to have you here. Because you are someone that, I know that I am a fangirl of your work, and I'm guessing Jillian is as well. So thank you so much. Yes, focus. Focus is so important, having a focus. So one of the things also that I like about Buzzsprout is it makes it very easy. They have a function where it will create a sort of snippet for you. You can go up to
Mm,
60 seconds. And when you click in that area, the podcast is sort of there, and you can you could just go in and choose up to 60 seconds that you want to choose. And then you just click on it, it does it automatically. And I am able to also upload different artwork if I want to for that snippet. And so I decided it would be fun. And since I'm kind of interested in AI and, learn so much from, our buddy Frank all the time, that when I started creating images with AI so that it kind of always has that sort of modern shades of blue
mm.
theme. And I'm using that because, you're purple, I'm blue, so I'm kind of trying to use my colors and just being much more intentional about everything that I'm doing today. And so that's one of the reasons that I really, really, really like them. Um,
Can I ask you something before you move on? So that
of course.
snippet, is it an audio? Is it like
Audio.
an audiogram? So it's
Yeah.
like a video snippet?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
It's a video. So it
cool.
creates the video, and and again, the podcast is sort of there, and you can let it play or go to a certain area and just,
Nice.
click on where you want to stop. And then there's a little preview, click preview, and it'll play like up to whatever, how many seconds that you want it to be. And then when you get it right, you just, click yes, make it, and it makes it up, and
Wow.
you can put in your other artwork, if if you want to. And I decided that was something actually that I learned from our friend Frank Prendergast, who with the AI, is it makes for me, I think it makes my podcast stand out in like the LinkedIn feed where I'm sharing it. Rather than just, the podcast artwork was kind of like me with the name of the podcast, was just like, yeah, so boring. So where before we move on, and oh my God, I'm so excited. Oh my God. So our buddy Jeff says that it's been like, okay, we do all the heavy lifting, and all I do is show up. Well, we're pleased that you do. And again, share. Thank you for saying that you're learning from us, because we learn from you all the time. So where do you share it to promote it before we move on?
My biggest place is LinkedIn because the
Okay.
podcast is the LinkedIn Easy Peasy podcast. So that just
Right.
makes sense that that's my platform where I'm going to put it. So what I do is I do an audiogram,
Mhm.
and I use a tool called Descript. And what I do is I upload the MP3 file. And
Mhm.
then from there, I go in and I choose a snippet. And what I like to do is I kind of like to get something. I tend to make them quite short, so I go for like a 30-second. That's usually my thing, is a
Mhm.
30-second snippet. I upload the art from of my guest, so it's me and my guest, so it's not,
Okay.
hopefully not boring, because it's I love my guests. I love them to be sort of the star of my show. And then I like to add the waves, the audiogram waves, so that people go, "Oh, something's happening here." It's eye candy, and it catches in the feed. Plus, also too, I'm really, really big about accessibility, so I like to have the captions displaying on top. And Descript is a tool that you can use to automatically do that. And the
Mhm.
reason why I use Descript is because that allows me to have the show sound. So, that's the tool that I'll run my MP3 file through to make sure that the audio levels of my
Mhm.
speaker and of me and my guest are the
Mhm.
same, because you don't want me to be loud, them to be quiet, or,
Right,
or
right.
vice versa. And also, too, it removes all of those ums and ahs and filler words, which, it's live, people. You can't You can't help but have those. And it takes care of all that. So that's why I like Descript. It allows me to do two things. And the bonus is at the end, I get a transcript. And you always want to have this because down the road, when you repurpose, there's way more than just a podcast and audiogram snippets. You can do so much with a live. And if you're not recycling your lives, you are missing out because this is evergreen content.
Yeah. So we're going to jump to snippets, and then we'll have to talk more about that at the end. And yeah, I see that too. And one thing I want to mention, I don't know if you have heard this yet, but Apple is going to start adding transcripts to all the podcasts
Yeah.
because they want to make them more accessible to the people on Apple. So it's really, really, I know it's, podcasting. I love it. But I will say something, and I don't know if you get this too, but since, once you have a podcast and you have podcasts on your LinkedIn profile, you're bombarded with people, hello, our
Mm.
CEO to be on your podcast and talk about, his great, climbing Mount Everest or something like whatever. And then when someone does come that might be a little interesting, although that's unusual, I contact them and say, well, my LinkedIn live show that feeds into my podcast. I never hear from them again. I never hear from them. Like, oh no, I don't want to be on live. So, so let's jump over to clips because we both do those too. And so I will pass the baton back to you to talk
Okay.
about how you do your clips.
I love my clips. Okay. So clips, the biggest thing that I found is I like to make, and this is just me, so it's not like you have to do this. This is just me. I like to make my clips be a little bit different looking than the original live. Because if I just put the live out as is, people will be like, oh, I already saw that show, or it's you just want to change things up a little bit. So I've always tried to do different things with my clips. So if my lives are 16:9, which they always are, which is this rectangle format that we're doing today,
Mhm.
then I would want to change it up. So I actually like to do vertical clips because I think it looks different. And then
Mhm.
if I can keep them short enough, then I can also repurpose those clips over on YouTube as a YouTube short. So that's
Mhm.
sort of my go-to. Now, my second go-to is doing a 16:9 clip like this and adding it to my LinkedIn newsletter or any LinkedIn articles. So to me, they're like Netflix. They're like little teaser trailers. Like if you go to watch, I don't know, I was watching last night Slow Horses or something, and it was just like there's all these different trailers. And you want to have those little snippets in your article because nobody's going to sit and maybe watch a whole LinkedIn live replay if they don't really know what's this about. It's like Netflix. We're not going to go watch the whole movie. We want to see that trailer. So I just put short clips, maybe a minute. That's
Mhm.
kind of what I aim for with those. So they're a little bit longer. And I put those into my newsletter, and you can embed those from either YouTube or Vimeo. My preference is Vimeo. We can talk about why I prefer that later if you want, but that's my
Yeah.
go-to, my two things.
Okay. And so you create those clips, you create those into script also, right? So
No,
no.
actually, I don't. I don't
Okay.
because it's interesting. I like to use Capwing, or it's Kapwing. I never know how they pronounce it. And that's I own so many video tools that like
I
will
know.
make your head spin. And you have to actually narrow it down because it can be hard where you're like, oh, do I use this tool or this tool? I actually have to have an Apple note of all the different tools I have because sometimes I forget and I'm like, what did I make this in? So I actually like to use Kapwing. The reason why I like Kapwing is it actually has a automatic tool that will split the clips for you. It finds highlights and they're just suggestions. So you can upload a 30-minute LinkedIn Live and it will give you suggestions of, oh, here's a little thing where we talked about storytelling. And here's a little thing where we talked about repurposing. And it just goes through and I can choose those, but I can very, very easily say, oh, I want to make this a little bit shorter or a little bit longer. I want to add stuff in, take stuff out. It's just an easy tool because it's working with the transcript And
Yeah.
I just love Kapoing. And I've set up templates. And so I can get in there and do them really, really fast. So that's my tip is pick a tool that you know how to use so that you can not be spending too much time, because it's a rabbit hole, isn't it? Video
It
stuff,
it
it's a rabbit hole.
it is, and I have a bunch of them. I have a bunch of them too. So I started using, well, I have sort of a membership I bought through AppSumo through to a site called Chopcast, which I actually started using that a couple of years ago before it was really popular and everybody was doing it. So that is the same type of thing. You upload it and it comes up with the clips for you. And one thing I'm able to do there is to make them square, because
Mm,
I've been doing that square, because I like to repurpose obviously on LinkedIn, but I like to share them on Instagram and also on TikTok. So, that gives me content for those other platforms. But also, as you said, shorts on YouTube, because it's a great way to get to get that attention, to your channel. But it's also, Riverside, I just learned about too.
mhm.
It's another tool, and that they have a free version that's fairly robust, does the same kind of thing. And I will mention to the people who use Kajabi, they just started a whole creator, it's in sort of beta right now, but a creator studio, and I'm able to do that there too. So which makes, that platform even more valuable, because it's yet one more thing that you can do in that one place. Because as you're saying, like, I have things that I purchase and stuff, and it's like I just don't use it because I forget that I even have it. And so I share, I think, to more platforms. So I cannot believe this. We are already like getting towards the end. I just want to acknowledge a couple people also in our audience. Our buddy Linda. Yes, so Descript. It's so popular. I am one of the only people that hasn't tried it. I know it's really, really popular tool, and they have a free version too, right? Is it pretty robust?
I think it has a watermark, and so there's always a catch with free.
Yeah,
There's either like you
yeah.
only get so many minutes, or there's a watermark or whatever. One cool thing about Descript, and I haven't actually published any videos with this, but I know about this, is it has an eye autocorrect. So
Oh, okay.
if you do a LinkedIn live, and say, for instance, I'll say you're doing one solo and you spent the whole time forgetting to look at Lenny the lens, and you're just like, oh, I was looking at me the whole time and I look awful looking at me. You can actually go in and it can autocorrect and make your eyes look like you were doing it.
And it doesn't look weird?
No, it looks actually pretty darn amazing.
Okay.
So I've never actually published anything, because I don't worry too much about that. And I always focus on trying to, that's why I bring Lenny and my little Post-it note,
Oh,
Lenny, to everything. So it's great.
I do too. I do too. But it's very challenging for me um, to not look at my guests. And so I do tend to look over at my guests, and I try to train myself to go back. So but then again, it is live, and we're both checking comments and things like that as well. So that's it. And I just want to put this up because Jeff mentioned the idea of embedding the clips in the newsletters being awesome. And I noticed you doing that too. And I think it's such a great practice. And I do embed a lot of video also. I try to put that in my newsletter because it is really boring. I think I published one like right at the end of the year or something, where I had all text because I was in such a hurry. Like I'm like this, with like 9 p.m. trying to get it in before the end of the year. So there is that. So we are getting really close to the end. So if you want to talk about that whole what you had mentioned about why you
Vimeo
yeah,
versus
why you
YouTube.
what yes, yes.
Okay, so if I have already put a video on YouTube, like for instance, we're streaming today to YouTube, aren't we?
Right.
So
Yes. Yes.
if a video is already on YouTube, I will embed that video. That totally makes sense. But sometimes I want to have people not get distracted, which is why I like to send my clips, my video clips into Vimeo, because I can control what happens. And what happens at the end is I always set my Vimeos to just go back to the thumbnail and look very nice. Because with YouTube, you cannot get rid of ads and the suggested videos. So I don't necessarily want to have videos that are being suggested that might be unrelated or maybe embarrassing. They might just be something like very strange and odd and whatever. They could be my competitors. I don't know. So
Yeah.
I like to have that. I'm kind of a control freak. So I like to have that. And I think it looks a little bit more professional. So that's just me. And then the extra thing is you can embed your podcast clips into newsletters. And a lot of people don't do that. And I can tell you, I can't, because I'm using Spotify for podcasters. It only works with certain different platforms. What kind of grammar is that? Certain different. But I know, for instance, like I bet you yours will work, Annette. It's like it depends where your host is. So even though I'm on Apple and Spotify and all these places, because I'm on being hosted on Spotify for podcasters, I can't do my clips, but I can do other people's clips. And that is really awesome. I can do my own, but it's only like a 15-second preview. But for instance, with yours, Annette, you would be able to have the whole episode embedded in an article or newsletter, and people could listen to it without bouncing out of LinkedIn. And so the more you can get people to, play something, either watch or listen on the platform, the better it is.
Wow. Wow. That's really interesting. And I have to think about that myself. That, there's so much to do. I think people are thanking us, get that we've shared some good tips. And, but what we have learned is the result of, a few years of doing this stuff. So, and you learn a little bit here and you learn a little bit there. And I want to say hi. Do we have 5 people on Instagram joining us today, which is so kind of exciting. And we have Chef. Chef, I can't read the rest of your name there, joining from Instagram. Thank you so much. It's so exciting. So I guess I may as well just keep this up then. And we are at the end. And so actually, one thing I want to just share your website here if people are not familiar with you. And while I'm getting that up, do you have any, what final thoughts do you have to share before we say goodbye?
Just to remember that your clips, all the content that you can repurpose from a live is evergreen. So it doesn't matter that you did that live two months ago, 2 weeks ago, or even 2 years ago. It's great content, and start easy peasy. So if all you can do is make a quote and make a Canva clip that people could look at, that's a start. Or take a live and make sure it gets to your YouTube channel. Just start with one thing and then build from there. So don't feel you have to do everything going out of the gate. Just take it easy peasy and do one thing.
Oh, absolutely. I think so too. And, one of the things that I've heard you say, I think, and I've said myself, is that, for people who are nervous about being on video and they're nervous about being on camera, being on LinkedIn Live, even if you're not hosting, if you're not hosting, but you be on somebody else's show, is a great way to, I think, get comfortable being on video. And I think part of the reason is once you get into the conversation, and I'm pretty sure because I watch your shows and you're a great host, and it's, like for us, it's like we're just sitting talking. We don't really think about people being there or how we look on video or whatever, because we're engaged in the conversation. And so would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think the very fact that we have people here and we're doing this live and we're not making this recorded, we know that we don't have to worry about edits. We don't have to go back and do anything special. And it makes us up our game. by providing good tips and not just sitting here making it about us. Because at the end of the day, lives are not about us. They're about the people that are joining us here in the audience. And I commend you, Annette, for bringing everybody in the show today, because I like when that happens. I think the audience is an equal player at this table with us today.
Oh, I do too. And so before we says we are saying goodbye, thank you to everyone who has been here with us and joined our conversation on LinkedIn, and I'm guessing on YouTube and also on Instagram. It's been our treat to be here today, hanging out with each other, and so glad that you could join our party. So have a great rest of your day, and I will be back and see you again next week. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.